I think it might be the most. Are these two the ones that have played the most out of any players in StarCraft 2? I'm not sure. But
that's a hard question to answer when you've got guys like Nurchio and Bly.
Yeah, but spawning in the top left-hand side of the map, it is the blue Terran player. It is Kelazhu for Archangel Gaming.
And his opponent in the southeast, the red Terran player, he is SpeCial.
Yeah, there's Bly and Nurchio for sure, and Bly that remains, and he does play a lot of Open Cups. But these two have met pretty much in every finals in the last very many years, or at least in the great majority of them, and certainly at some point otherwise during the Latin American tournaments and events. So I think at the at the biggest level of competition, like at least regionally, I think that these two must have met more than anyone else. 129 victories for SpeCial versus 65 of Kelazhu is the aftermath of those encounters.
Damn. That's a scary number to read going into a series. Both players managed to make the other build their command center in an awkward spot by that natural. And I mean, TVT can be really interesting with the double gas builds that a lot of people do, but we're going to have just kind of like regular Reaper expands, both sides. You want to kind of use it to just check around, make sure there's not like a starport around your base, maybe. I think probably my favorite, most interesting fact about this map, especially in Terran versus Terran or Terran versus Protoss, because of the size of the main bases and the way that the gas and the mineral patches are arranged, it's almost impossible to build a third CC in your main base without it being in range of something from the low ground. So you have to be really mindful about that later on. I know a lot of people like Cyclone or tank pushes on this map can be really dangerous because of that. But that Reaper, you definitely don't want to start the map losing the only unit you have that can fight.
No, not at all. And he's having to tuck it so that it can regenerate before re-engaging. And it's even going to re-engage before it fully heals, which is not what Kelazhu wants right now. This Reaper by SpeCial has caused too much havoc already with 2 SCV kills and some minor delays. Will finally get pushed out.
Our comms are bugging out a little bit, so I'm just going to say excellent point, Paolo. I completely agree. As the command center goes back in place for SpeCial and is natural, and they're gonna get their orbital commands together. The reactor Hellion follow-up can be pretty scary if your units are out of position on like SpeCial side of the field. Hellions are obviously very strong in the open. You can actually clap people who try to go for like a couple of cyclones because they just won't kill them fast enough, and they don't have enough hit points to really sustain a lot of hits from those Hellions. But it's going to be a Marauder building. Okay, so I actually know this one. Kelazhu is probably going to get a medevac. This build is a bit tricky to go against. It's actually really good versus Cyclone openers. I don't know if it'll be as strong against this, but he's going to go Hellion Marauder. He's going to drop the Marauders in with the Hellions and try to do a ton of damage early on. This is actually one of those scary builds you run into on ladder a lot.
Yeah, it looks pretty scary indeed. I'll let you do most of the talking, Nate, since we're having a little bit of... You can hear me?
Yeah, it sounds good now.
Amazing!
I love you.
All right.
I think our comms are separate from the cast as well, so everybody else probably...
That is true. Fine. Yeah, but still. Third CC is being produced by SpeCial, and Kelazhu is going to lag in that aspect, so I think SpeCial is already making some nice transitions, and a really nice scout here is going to see the potential for that drop of the Hellions and Marauders. Doesn't know about the Marauders, though.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those things you're happy to see. That command center on the top side of the base with the Marauder drop could try to force a cancel or something, but there's quite a few units here. The Cyclone on its own is very, very valuable. It's if SpeCial were to lose that out in the open, if the Hellions got the jump on them or the Marauders tagged in with the concussive, that could fall apart really fast. But SpeCial's kind of feeling the pressure. The third CC is almost done. He supply drops a depot in the natural so that he can get his production going again. If he can get this Banshee and tank out, he's going to be totally fine. But this type of attack can still be really scary to go up against. There's the auto turret, says it's time to step off.
Yeah, I mean, that medevac uses the boost, trying to get the Marauders to a position where they can catch the Cyclone, like you were mentioning, but then runs into the auto turret and the Marines and is forced to go back. I mean, I can't like this position too much for Kelazhu. Gonna try for a follow-up drop, but will be deflected before it starts.
Yeah, and even if you didn't want to play like bio for the rest of the game, having that medevac, having the threat of that drop is still so big and so important. There's so much that you can do with that type of thing. Catching this Banshee out in the field is nice too, though. Considering I don't even think he got close.
Oh, not being researched either. So second Viking in production for Kelazhu, and yeah, that's the first little victory that he gets, and it's a big one. I mean, it's the first choice of aggression for SpeCial. Maybe I mean at this point the Scouting Reaper, I guess, was the first choice for aggression, but no less, not a small commitment for a Banshee.
All right, so there's the scan from SpeCial. Kind of wants to see that follow-up. He wants to know if it's going to be mech or bio. Seeing the factories building is definitely going to be the tip-off point. So the expectation usually becomes bio players going to try and make big drops or build such a large army that they can overwhelm the mech player while they try to take their third or their fourth, and they don't have a tremendous number of siege tanks to actually defend themselves with, or the Vikings are out of position. So Kelazhu wants to kind of try and slow down SpeCial as much as he can, but you can't really take any fights in the open. Oh, 2 auto turrets get dropped, and they smack the medevac full of Hellions north of SpeCial's third, and that's painful, Cats.
Yeah, that is really painful. I mean, we'll see what he is able to do to stabilize here. The third for SpeCial is now established as well. So nearing 100 supply, Kelazhu really is hard-pressed to make something happen.
Yeah, and we have the armories finishing up. Well, I can hear you a little bit better now, buddy. And 1-1 coming together. I mean, losing that medevac hurts, but like at the end of the day, if the mech player can stabilize on 3 bases, anything goes. Like at some point, there's enough tanks where no amount of bio is going to be able to punch through without some trickery or getting the mech player to kind of stretch themselves out, trying to take more bases in a really long, drawn-out game.
Most definitely. Let's see what SpeCial is able to do with his forces out on the map.
Well, he's got 2. Yeah, he gets the tank drop. He gets them secured. That's pretty bad. The starport and armories are both exposed, and if this tank isn't able to siege up, he can snipe that too.
Yeah, the main is so very tiny that a lot of those SCVs pushed up against the wall, and now the bio force is at the third. SpeCial has taken a commanding lead in this game.
Yeah, the reactor on that starport does look like it's going to burn down, Cats, and he's focusing the command center. There's only one SCV here that can even try to repair it. It's getting very low. But he does barely manage to save that. But look at what's happening behind this SpeCial. He's double expanding, building a fusion core. Oh, he's already getting ready to drive the nail in.
Oh yeah, he is not messing about. I mean, he's really not playing with his chances here. I think he knows or wants this tournament to be his. He wants it to be flawless because he is really not missing a beat, right? Like not taking any chances, double expanding like you mentioned. If one of those gets canceled, he's still plenty far ahead.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where, like, as a mech player, you take 1 or 2 hits like that, and the next thing you know, ranged liberators show up. You're like, oh, I've got enough tanks to stop the bio. Yeah, I've got enough Vikings to stop a doom drop. But then it's already over, right? And you get in trouble. But okay, Cats, he's getting the medevac upgrade first instead. Huh? Okay. I didn't expect that. That's
all right.
Okay.
Are we looking at doom drops then?
I suppose that's the plan. I mean, the map is big, but you have to keep in mind. So basically, in case anybody doesn't know, because we never see this upgrade researched in tournaments, they added the rapid reignition system for the medevacs, which basically means they're going to be able to boost a lot more, but also the medevac just by default moves faster. So the medevacs are going to be able to much more easily get around the map without boosting, but if he focuses the boost, he'll be able to do a lot more of them.
Yeah, nice little spread here on the side of SpeCial trying to engage, but really there's no follow-up. Just identified that he can trade efficiently, and he could. Very nice. Even if that was a slightly unfavorable trade, any trade that is, you know, not terrible for him is good for him.
Yeah, it does use the interference matrix on the first siege tank, kills that one, but there were 2 more in that back line. Can he kill those off? It would be huge. Gets 1 of them.
Poor target firing, I think, from SpeCial uncharacteristically, right? If you're gonna use the matrix on 1 tank, then leave it to last.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, why doesn't he get the one furthest away? Because he's gonna have to run the furthest in, right, to get the back tanks with those forces. But as you can see, we've got that upgrade done. These medevacs moving pretty quickly. So, and even with sensor towers, even with Vikings, there's always that possibility that you know, you have your muscle memory of what you expect, how things work. Although I don't know if this will ever work. As 5 Vikings, it's going to be a no for me, dog. Wow, see, the Vikings can't really chase either anymore.
Wow, I have never seen that scan used, and it was brilliant. I mean, amazing. He scans the Vikings and pulls away. That could have been disastrous.
That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. You can't, you don't just go through a sensor tower like that without seeing if the mech player left their Vikings there, but he tries to step forward a little bit here. He's going to doom jump onto the tanks, Cat, from the backside while he pushes with the front army, dropping right on top of the tanks, causing them to splash damage each other at the same time, mitigating the effect of that splash since his army is just so spread out now.
Yeah, having to land the Vikings. I mean, this might look like Kelazhu is holding, but it will be at a steep cost, especially because SpeCial has such a great capacity to remax that, again, any of these traits are good. He's keeping the tank count low in a way where he can continue to deal with it and continue to pile on the aggression. So I don't think he's stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, look at that. As soon as the Vikings stand up, he just spreads the army out, dives in again, says, this is not enough siege tanks to kill me. And killing those Vikings means he can reposition if he wants to now, too. Straight back to the main base. He could try with his other medevacs that are at full health, but he may not even need to do that, Cat. Siege tanks dying as they come out of the factories, and Kelazhu taps out. GG.
Yeah, and there's the momentum now further going on the side of SpeCial. It's going to be hard to imagine a world where Kelazhu comes back. He's down 0-2 now against his arch nemesis, you could argue.
Yeah, no, that was brutal. I mean, I actually find the build that Kelazhu went for in this game is one of the ones that's like, you can really get caught off guard by that Marauder Hellion. Because a lot of Terrans will just be like, oh, if I build a few Cyclones and a Raven, like I'm safe against everything. But then Marauder's like, no. So really, really good job holding that. Like he didn't take any losses. The auto turret smacked it away. He had his command center tucked back very far. The Hellions couldn't do anything from the low ground. And yeah, that's really all there is to say. I really like that he got medevac speed. We never see it, but I feel like it was really cool. I don't know. It didn't decide the game, but it was cool.
Yeah, I think if we are ever gonna see it, it's gonna be in this type of game, right? Where one Terran player takes on the Sergi type approach, and medevacs are really essential for mobility and for a lot of tactics that you can employ. So I like that he used it here, out of all possible scenarios. He had the economy too, right? Like he had the money for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I really like that thought process, and I personally don't play really bio in TVT. But one of the smartest things that you can do when you're playing bio, especially if you ever get any damage done, like he did with that 2 siege tank, like 8 Marine drop in the main base, just double expanding and then immediately getting the rest of his production in tech, because the mech player is not going to counterattack you when they're on 110 supply. Like it'll never work, right? Even if you don't realize it till the last minute, you pull your workers, marauders spread out. Like it's really hard. Mech is all about the big maxed out force, and SpeCial just said, no, that's never going to happen in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the mech team player, a lot of the time, they will have to continuously be setting up for defense, and SpeCial took advantage of that window given to him very, very well. So let's see what he is able to do and what he has up his sleeve still. It is El Orgullo de México. It is Juanito SpeCial.
Looking pretty sharp. And his opponent in the southeast, the blue Terran, he is Kelazhu.
The Brazilian American studying in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Someone was telling me, I was covering, he was playing in the EU Weekly this past Monday, I think it was. And someone was saying that he's graduated, he's finished his classes or something. He's been focusing more on the StarCraft.
I think it's more like the classes are not happening right now.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, I guess technically the point would still be that he's putting a little bit more time into the practice versus anything else. Yeah. Yeah. You make a good point. Sometimes I forget there's other reasons why people would be done with school for a bit.
Yeah.
So, a very sharp gameplay coming out of him thus far, but it's very hard to make it work against these guys, because I thought his gameplay, even in the EPT Cups, has still been really good. But SpeCial has really cemented his position. I'd love to see him be able to finally like take home a big like championship in one of the global events or something like that. But there's a reason why he's like the terror of Latin America, because he just wins everything.
Yeah, for a very long time that has been the case. He's always been a very strong player, and yeah, like you said, I think Kelazhu has a very high skill ceiling, but so does SpeCial. And the difference between SpeCial and Kelazhu is that SpeCial has not taken any of those breaks, and he has been playing consistently and peaking at this point, right? Like participating in the GSL, training in Korea, which Kelazhu has done in the past as well. He is right now in top shape.
Yeah, and another thing I've always liked about SpeCial, and it's a thing I like about Kelazhu too, but it's very hard to do, is keeping the variety in the play styles, right? Like SpeCial could play a great game of bio and throw in a medevac speed boost upgrade that we almost never see, but I mean he could throw down mech like the best of them, really, and that's where some of his stronger performances do sometimes come from. But I think even more so, and this really just like plays to the despair of Kelazhu, is that SpeCial has always been extremely good at TVT. You know, he's been practicing and working with Korean Terran players for as long as time has basically been running. And I remember even back to WCS America days, like 6 years ago, he was clapping guys like Tasia in his prime in their groups because TVT was just always one of his specialties. He just has a really good grip on the matchup. And I don't feel like he's ever really been bad in Terran versus Terran.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want to thrive in Korea, in the Korean scene, you best be good at TVT, right? So, yeah, SpeCial is definitely no slouch in this area. One of the best we have. And TVC also very strong. He's just really well-rounded right now. He's very strong. Indeed,
he is. We're going to have a Banshee opening. It's just a cloakless Banshee, which I do find interesting. It would kind of keep you safe against some things. I don't know how I feel about going for a Banshee without Cloak and TVT, just because everybody usually goes like Cyclone or Raven or Viking, and Cloak is like how you dodge the last hit to not die most of the time. But I don't know, maybe he's just getting it defensively, and or he just wants him to build turrets without thinking he would get Cloak.
Yeah, 2 Ravens being produced, one for either. Very cute gas finishing right before the CC finishes, and Kelazhu will get a nice scout. Not sure, does this tell you enough, Nate?
Yeah, actually, this looks about as basic as it can be. That gas timing is specifically designed. This Banshee's going to come in and get a few kills, actually, by the way. So, shame on me. You can't do too much else with the Cyclone out on the map. But the most standard opening, nice. Like the most standard opening, I think, in TVT, and maybe the Reaper expands making a comeback, and I just haven't noticed, but is you want that third gas to line up with the finishing of that command center, because it perfectly allows you to build the siege tank and the Raven for a lot of 2 Raven, 2 tank builds into Vikings. And it still works with this faster swap for the Vikings, but you know, siege tanks cost a lot of gas, Ravens cost a lot of gas. You actually can't afford to do this build without taking that gas in the natural. If you do, you're going to end up with something being very late, and it usually ends up being something important. Which is why, especially in TVT, you kind of have to do it. Otherwise, you just can't build enough of what you need. Natural is way important.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen up to 3 Ravens we were seeing yesterday, but this time around, both players choosing to go for the Vikings over those. I mean, does Kelazhu have enough? It looks like he does. Is it in the right position?
Yeah, I think the Vikings coming out should be able to create the space that he needs, because yeah, the Vikings just aren't there for SpeCial yet, and that might be why SpeCial wanted to go for faster Vikings. He might have been thinking that there would be a second Raven. He might have been thinking that there would be a second Raven for Kelazhu, and that he wouldn't have any Vikings, and then he could just take the air control and dominate that way. But both players pretty intelligently swap off to Vikings faster. Like, Vikings are just so important and crucial in this phase of the game because there's no stim bio, and landed Vikings absolutely obliterate like siege tanks, SCVs, even auto turrets. Like, they're just, landed Vikings do insane damage to mechanical. So you really cannot afford to just have a tank and a Raven trying to make a siege push work. But here we go. He's got 4 Vikings. He's going to try to go north of the natural.
Nice positioning on the Cyclone, though. Will give him a heads up as he gets rid of the Reaper, who scouts nothing. Another Reaper dies in the main, but SpeCial will no less take an annoying position, sieging one of the gases of Kelazhu.
And that's really nice. Even if the only thing this push does is delay him from being able to mine this gas for like a minute or 2, he's building 2 factories, Kelazhu, excuse me. So this immediately takes a tremendous amount of steam out of a mech opener because mech is all about the wind up, right? Like mech doesn't really become scary until you're at that 140, and even that's like the minimum supply that you can actually really do anything. The Widowmine does take a Viking out too. That is unfortunate.
Yeah, especially because the Widowmine had been spotted before, so it had to be somewhere on the path. Kelazhu not paying enough attention to his army. Now just trying to posture on the map. What are the players trying to do here? What is the important moves to make? Why is space so contested?
Well, stuff like this can happen, right? Like the Hellions can end up, you can kind of bait. What you're really honestly hoping for is to just force a fight that your opponent isn't ready for. Like your opponent isn't expecting the position that you're in. Because
I mean, that was kind of it, right? On the air,
yeah.
The Vikings picked off one for free. So, oh, he's going for it.
He's feeling confident. He's using that air control that he's going to have here for the vision for his own tanks. And he does get interference matrix, but you have to keep in mind, without the Viking count being enough to push back, he can't have the vision he needs to utilize the maximum range of the siege tanks. And now this base is under threat. He needs to be very careful with this, because if he loses too many of those supporting ground units, like I said, he could land those Vikings on the tanks and kill them almost instantly. They're that good.
Oh, and SpeCial continuing to identify the weakness on these Vikings, and Kelazhu's number is dwindling. No repairs until now on the Vikings, but not before. SpeCial continues to snowball and snipe one Viking every time he sees one, essentially. What can Kelazhu do? It looks extremely difficult of a position. Nothing on the side of SpeCial either.
This is the worst part about playing mech, is he's not going to be able to trickle out Marines and like try to suicide them in to help with the Viking situation. I don't know that there's really a whole lot he can do other than pull everything, but there's so many siege tanks here for SpeCial. As long as he has air control, there's really nothing that Kelazhu can do. Like, yeah, Hellions on their own can't fight against this. He needs to be able to move tanks and siege them.
Yeah, he's already positioned in a way where he's going to trade efficiently no matter what, right? He has air and ground control in a position where Kelazhu is forced to do something. I mean, the Liberator is a nice idea, but how do you do that without the Vikings to kill SpeCial's Vikings?
Yeah. And he has Marines with Stim now that can actually help in a real fight against the Liberator. He doesn't need the Vikings for anti-air, and he's going to be able to kill this command center easily. It's possible that he doesn't focus it down, I guess, but his army on its own should be able to defend itself. And then the cream on top, right? You've got the Liberator, and you don't have any Vikings. GG! SpeCial takes another one.
Yeah, that's a 3-0. We're on match point now, so I believe we're gonna throw it to a quick break before coming back to the decider. Or no break. Actually, no breaks will be had.
The voice in our heads has told us that we will not give you a break. We know everybody watching would love for another break right now, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to jump into the next game of this series pretty soon. But yeah, I mean that's like a textbook collapse of early game TVT. Is that Raven is the most important unit, and that's why you see usually 2 Ravens is like the standard, 3 Ravens is if you're feeling frisky, and then 1 Raven is I'm gonna probably try to all in you, and I just want to disable 1 or 2 tanks to get the position that I want. And when I say all in, I of course just mean he's making a very committed push. Like if that somehow gets cleaned up, if it goes the other way for Kelazhu, then he takes that 3rd base, no problem. He becomes a very difficult to break mech player, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff, right? The game goes on, I suppose, is probably the better way to put it. But that's why that is so important. And even though he was going bio, even though he got Stim, combat shields, he got, I think, +1 during that, he didn't build any medevacs, because that's not what you need to beat mech, as much as it is just having a ton of Vikings in that early phase, and they just can't do anything. They don't have vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be difficult for Kelazhu to come back from this. I think that the cool thing too, Nate, is how the very action of making your Vikings clump up and engaging with them while Kelazhu was not paying attention kind of just snowballed everything, because up until that point in the middle of the map, they were pretty much mirroring each other in terms of their air capacity, right? Both players with the same number of Vikings, the same energy on the Ravens, pretty much the same number of tanks, and dead in the middle of the map. So it just came down to SpeCial actually clumping up his Vikings against Kelazhu's not clumped up Vikings, and attacking and killing 1 Viking of Kelazhu before Kelazhu would reply with his own non-focused fire, right? So I think that from then on, SpeCial just took an amazing advantage on the air, and he leveraged it beautifully.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. Just a master class of it. And to what you're talking about, like with the Viking stack, stuff like that is just so nice because the Viking has a very slow damage point. Like between when it acquires a target and when it actually shoots and gets those missiles into the enemy unit, like there's a whole animation of the rockets speeding up coming out of it. So it's very hard to pick off units like that if you don't stack them. Actually, stacking the Vikings in that type of situation is really smart because then you can force them all to shoot at the same time in such a burst that the enemy player just doesn't have time to react if they're not looking. And even though Vikings can do a lot of overkill in low numbers like that, it works out to be pretty cost efficient to trade like that.
Yeah,
it also makes it impossible to target fire your own units.
Yeah, not only that, but as you were mentioning, like even if you come at an angle and not have all of your Vikings right in the dead center of the Vikings of your opponent, then it's very likely that only one or two of the Vikings of your opponent will end up shooting back.
Yes.
So really, really well done by SpeCial here. We are loaded into this match point, and personally hoping that that Kelazhu will bring it back. However, here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have his opponent, the mountain standing behind him. It is SpeCial, or in front of them, I guess.
And his opponent in the northeast, the blue Terran player desperately trying to claw this one back. Now for match point, he is Kelazhu.
Who will be the king of Latin America this time around? Caliente.
Yes, it's gonna be. Ooh, okay. So Kelazhu is going for the old 2 racks, and he theoretically could like try to turn this into a 3, but 2 racks Reaper defensively, and it can be like you can put on like a semi pressure with this type of build. It can get you a build order win versus Reaper expand if your opponent sends theirs to scout, and then you like get the jump on his, because then at max they have maybe 1 Marine and a building factory on the other side. So, and this build also makes you mostly like cheese proof. This can deal with almost everything just because you have like the high ground, like even if it was a proxy 3 racks Reaper, for example. So I don't mind this out of Kelazhu. This allows him to leverage what he's good at, which one of the things I would say is Reaper control. But the SDV scout from SpeCial, if he sees the second barracks, then it's not going to be too hard for him to figure it out. But he starts the command center on the low ground cats, and as you said, he did not see it.
All right, that is pretty good start for Kelazhu. Then let's see if he can actually do something with his Reapers and his amazing micro. He will be expanding behind it, and it looks like he's just gonna move out with the Reaper, or does he look to hold a position in the middle of the map and hope that SpeCial moves out? What do you do?
Well, I think you check for the proxies, which makes sense. A lot of Terrans will move it out onto the middle of the map just because you usually think that your opponent has 1 Reaper max. And if you're confident, you kind of want that fight, right? Because you're like, oh, well, if I use my grenade properly and if I boop him and he doesn't boop me, then I just win. And that's why he has this SCV down here as well to soak that shot. So the first hit's not a big deal. But this is a scary moment. Now the 2 Reapers together, if he target fires, it can get tricky. He's really waiting for the third one. That SCV being there throws a wrench in everything.
Does this second Reaper already give away the strategy to SpeCial? This is the Reaper from the second barracks, right? That arrives a little bit faster than it would otherwise be able to arrive. Now it's the third one's arriving. If
SpeCial and Kelazhu were doing the same build, then the second Reaper would have showed up much later because his second Reaper just finished, but the other one was already across the map. So it had to have been from another barracks somewhere, and then the third Reaper gives it away. But the fact that he didn't have that window to attack, he even got the Marine out after the second Reaper, like that's just very smart. A lot of Terrans will go 1 Reaper and then build a reactor, or 1 Reaper, 1 Marine. And that you can just auto lose to this type of build. And that's why I call it like a soft pressure. You know, it would be more of like a tasteless type, like a boop or a bop. It's not quite like an all-in play, but it's basically Kelazhu saying he wants to be safe. But it also gives him a pretty quick segue, since he has 2 barracks, and to do it in like a 2-1-1. Which is what his follow-up is going to be. Very fast stim Marine attack.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked, in particular, the repositioning from a SpeCial to the high ground right away as he saw the second Reaper arrives. So Kelazhu not able to do much, but like you mentioned before, it's not so committed, the pressure, right? It's just that little poke and the safeness that it offers. The 2 racks opener, I mean, from Kelazhu?
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So Stim, about a third of the way, almost half done. Sometimes I forget just like how fast that upgrade comes in now. Because you know me, I don't ever research that. But yeah, the safety of the build is really nice. And economically speaking, it doesn't have to force you into a bad spot. Like the worker count is still very similar despite, you know, no losses on either side. The weaknesses of doing this type of build and the reason why this is not like mega common or standard is despite the fact that, yes, Marines with Stim are very strong, everything in this game has been built basically for all races around dealing with Stim Marines. So it's not like SpeCial doesn't have an answer if he goes for a 1-1-1. Like a Raven can neutralize a medevac. Auto turret can actually kill Marines that are being healed by medevacs. If you're building 1 or 2 tanks, the Marines can't have combat shields this fast. So if they Stim once, then the tanks one-shot them in clumps. So like there's a whole bunch of vulnerabilities here. And then at the end of the day, if you were to like go double Viking like last game after the 1 Raven, then he's going to have Vikings out by the time medevacs could even try to make a push here for Kelazhu. And thus, you know, he could have the drop shut down and then it's just Marines without a whole lot of support. So there's a whole lot of nuance to doing these types of strategies. But this scan from SpeCial, excuse me, just kind of tells him everything he needs to know. There's probably going to be like 16 Marines coming to his base very soon. And if he feels like he can defend that, then he's going to take this third and not worry too much. If he attacks, I would find that quite curious because out in the open, those Marines could mow all of this down too.
Yeah, I like this fake move out as he takes his third as well. And I am very much with you. If he moves out, that could be tragic. I think it's on Kelazhu to move out, who does not have a third CC currently. So I think he's very much preparing for a timing of some sort. Now, you talked about this map being choky and difficult to attack into in a, you know, in a different matchup, but I think the same remains true for TVT, right?
Yeah, no, this is still a pretty easy map to defend on. Look at where the Cyclone's patrolling. He's covering a lot of his bases. He's gonna see this. I don't know that he'll kill anything, but yeah, look at that scan. He wants to guarantee the kill in the medevac, and even if he were to lose the Cyclone, which he does, it doesn't end up being that bad because the value of the Cyclone at this point is minimal compared to erasing one of the ways that 8 Marines could get into his base because he wants him to attack the front. He wants to keep his tanks at the front. He wants to be attacked at the front and just leave the Vikings to kind of cover the other options.
Yeah.
So it makes things a lot harder for Kelazhu.
Yeah, I mean, we see it reflected in his play here. He has a lot of non-medevac Marines, and just medevac that is loaded does make its way into the natural, though. And this is fantastic for Kelazhu right before the turrets were finished. So, I mean, what a great timing for this medevac to arrive. Is it enough, though? He's in a lot of position, too.
He's got a good amount of stuff watching the natural, watching the third. But the rest of Kelazhu's army might try to force its way up this choke. I do think that's dangerous. He has the tanks there. 2 tanks, 1 shot of Cyclone.
Sneaky, as that sensor tower luckily finishes 4 SpeCial as well and gives up the gig for Kelazhu, who will have to find another avenue of attack, but it looks like he's just resigned to take his own third at this point.
And now
maybe play the longer game.
Yeah, the question that you were just asking, Cats, becomes like mega true now. Like, because this map is just so easy to defend on. Like that natural, the choke is so tight. If you try to sprint Marines up there and there's literally just 1 or 2 tanks, I think 2 is probably the number minimum that you want watching this specific point. If you're like turtling, like you're just going to blow the Marines to smithereens. And I do like actually seeing like people wall off with buildings on that choke. But we do expect SpeCial to just generally be more aggressive. He's not really like the most passive guy. If he thinks he can hit a timing with this, he probably will go for it.
Certainly. And one of the vulnerabilities perhaps on this map that Terran can exploit is being covered by the watchtower, right? Or by the sensor tower in that airspace behind the third of SpeCial, which, you know, I thought maybe that's an avenue for those 2 medevacs, especially before the Cyclone picked one off. But that is shut down as well. So how do you approach this? Just double expand if you're Kelazhu?
Yeah, you got to try and take the map or something. It's going to be really hard. 2 medevacs are making their way to the natural. They got spotted on the way there, so some of these units were already repositioning. And really, this is one of those places where, you know, you put a little bit of extra money into missile turrets because, frankly speaking, it is the most vulnerable point. since it doesn't have the sensor tower on it. And then you can just kind of write off the rest of what could happen here. But he has to pull a surprisingly large amount of his forces back over here to deal with 3 Marines.
Yeah, regardless, SpeCial has been trading pretty cost efficiently, nearly 700 resources ahead of Kelazhu, and with arguably the stronger army composition moving further into the game. So I'm still at a loss. If you're Kelazhu here, what do? We saw maybe attempt at skipping through the tech options and maybe taking up to straight to battle cruisers or something with the map control.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the options that a lot of Terrans will go for. Just try to go to BCs or ranged liberators. I think the only other really like realistic option is that you play around the 4th, right? Like everything's on siege right now. He wants to take his 4th base. Could he just move into this while he tries to siege? Maybe, probably not, but put the tanks here. Don't let him mine that gold gas, right? The mech player doesn't want a base that's only minerals, and there's only one geyser that he could block off. So it gets tricky though, because does he have actually enough to support the tanks that are here? No, he's just going to pull back. See, that's really hard because you're on even basis with a mech player now, and he's harassing you. We got this liberator. Like
you would rather jump in there. I mean, I could see a universe where he breaks it, but I guess he was relying on these 2 medevacs to do something else before creating a distraction for the rest of his forces potentially at the front. So I like this move by Kelazhu, pulling a lot of the tanks back into the main. Does he have an opening in the natural now? Beautiful liberator as well for SpeCial.
Yeah, he's looking for that natural, but there's 4 tanks watching the gold cats, and this. I mean, like I said, this is the map. This is why if you play mech, you do not veto Eternal Empire. This is the map that you should win almost all of your games on. If you do like to play this type of style, it is very hard. Like I said, I think sieging on the right side of this base, or if you were like reverse positions, the left side, just cutting off that gas becomes such a pain because you can also block both of those bases really from the same spot, right? Yeah. As long as you don't let the guy move out and try to base trade you, which might be your only concern.
Because now it looks as though Kelazhu was headed towards that area just before this, but then SpeCial scanned him and he pulled back, right? Like that high ground behind the 4th base of SpeCial is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. It doesn't even need to be on the high ground. Like you can reach the gas from the other side of like that non-pathable area if he has just something to spot for it. And then once you do that, then then the entire focus is just trying to get your opponent to commit to all-inning you or like diving into your forces there. As we do have pause. As one of our observers is having a little bit of latency issue.
Aye.
Yeah. On this map in particular, I've played so many like drawn out TVTs because like as someone who mechs, you're almost always able to get to that position that you want to be in if you don't take the early damage. So if you let it get to this stage and you don't have a transition lined up and you're not willing to try and force a siege on your mech opponent, then you're in deep waters, I'll say.
That's nice. All right, SpeCial choosing to move out for the first time in the game. He feels like he's ready. I like the counterattack by Kelazhu. He's not going to mess about with that army once it's siege. So I think he's well aware of what's going on. He's going to try to find an opening himself. This is a decent position for Kelazhu in the sense that I don't see him as having 0 chances in winning a base trade, right? He's going to be quick to move through the bases.
The way SpeCial has done this is he's pretty much said, yeah, let's base trade. That's fine. The planetary is going to get destroyed. The first thing he did was actually siege his rallying tanks that just finished to kind of block off the choke point at the natural. And this is where he wants to make his stand. As long as he can keep his production intact and get to the production of Kelazhu, then he's got a chance here. Kelazhu is fighting back, though. Low amounts of supply of bio can kill a lot of mech if he's not careful. So you really need to be careful about like snaking those tanks forward and not getting caught by something like Liberators, which are coming out for Kelazhu. And that would completely shut down the Vikingless push.
Yeah, I mean, these Vikings are zoned out by the rest of the army of Kelazhu, so this will do it. Beautiful move by Kelazhu. I was questioning the lack of tanks on that high ground, but it seems like this option is even better, right? It's gonna do what it needs to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like he's still getting a tremendous amount of damage done. It's not necessarily over by any means. And SpeCial already retook his 3rd and has a 4th, and retook that 4th base. So the medevacs try to escape with the tanks. He saves 2 of them. 2 die. Oh, but he runs into Marines. Rip. Well, he sees that his opponent doesn't have the 3rd, 4th, or 5th position. He sees some SCVs there. I mean, he can play ball from this spot.
Yeah, SpeCial is actually ahead in workers and has the rich Vespin Geyser as well to count on. So if he can stabilize, things are still looking pretty good for him. But Kelazhu with a very big army comparatively. So if he can find the right angle, or if he can find SpeCial and Siege start moving towards him, that could be really good for Kelazhu. But not all of his armies here. Now it is. What is this? Suicide.
Why? No! I can't believe SpeCial tried to take this fight. There's a lot of bio here. Everything is going to die. And maybe he could clear out the medevacs. He still had that Liberator. I guess thank God he left some of his tanks at the planetary, but that was an extremely gutsy play to try and make. I feel like you got to land your Vikings here for support now. Try to at least pick off the siege tanks. That's a good grab, but wow. Okay, we've got ourselves quite a scrappy game. I'm just going to say, though, this planetary is the extra economy he has over Kelazhu. Kelazhu only has the third base as like his fresh expo. So if he cannot make this work, if he can't do this without running out of gas, he's gonna have to float his main or something, and that's gonna take some time. His economy has been brutally attacked by this.
Yeah, and in spite of SpeCial throwing out that army that was very questionable, I think misjudgment of his position, he's gotta be able to stabilize. And with those tanks behind the planetary fortress, it's Kelazhu that returns the favor, kind of overreaching there and suiciding his army in turn, right? That was already bruised up with not a lot of medevac energy into a PF, and now it's SpeCial back on the driver's seat, I think.
Yeah, and I love to see this. The use of the medevacs from the mech player, bringing Hellbats to just harass the worker line. You're forcing the bio to stim, which is consuming medevac energy, and that's going to make, you know, any sort of sustained engagement even more difficult, right? And he's got the constant threat now, because a bio player who's stimming and running around like this, well, he wants to build medevacs so he can keep doing that. But if you're getting Hellbat dropped nonstop and you can't catch them with your Marines, and your only option is going to be to build Vikings again. And your opponent has more Vikings than you, so they're not going to be very useful in a fight.
Yeah, another thing to note is that Kelazhu has not built any additional SCVs since that altercation. He has been stuck at 40, where SpeCial went from 50 to 71. So now there is a huge disparity. Even losing more SCVs is Kelazhu. So huge economic disparity with SpeCial doubling nearly the capacities for Kelazhu, plus that rich Vespin Geyser. I mean, yeah, the longer this goes, the worse it is for the Brazilian.
Yeah, and he's loading up another double drop. Let's try to hit the west side. Looks like he's got 8 Marauders, which could do a tremendous amount of damage while the rest of the bio does try to make its way to that 4th base. But at this point, everything is just on holding your 4th for SpeCial while trying to get some harass out. Like if he could do something to delay that command center, it is done now. Like if he had been able to do anything else there, that would have been huge. I still think he could siege the side of this base and try to force a fight, but SpeCial is repositioning, and maybe is he gonna try to go around it, like all the way around the bottom? That'd be insane.
The Marauders are going in.
You have the Hellbat drop.
A little bit annoying. The 2 medevacs of Marauders have made it into the main of SpeCial. This could be Kelazhu's one saving grace if he can cut enough reinforcements or do enough damage to the buildings here. Oh, only 1 medevac made it through, actually.
2 tanks are going to finish, but they're going to be right in the face of those units. I don't know if he's going to be able to get it out. No, he's not. The other tank sieges, but unfortunately does not even get to shoot. And he's going to go for the tech lab, say, hey, you can't build tanks anymore. Meanwhile,
nice move, but is it enough? I mean, he has so much to do in order to equalize here. At the same time, Kelazhu has finally situated his 4th base as well. I mean, he's at half the SCVs. How much does that impact the game?
I mean, as weird as it sounds, it's like the mains and naturals and thirds are all mined out because, like, you know, both players have mules. So the worker count is, like, as long as you've got enough to saturate like a base and a half at this point, you can make your money with the mules. But being forced in this situation to like not even be able to mine the gas, like Kelazhu's out of gas. He doesn't have refineries on his 3rd or on his 4th. He has 1 guy on the gas on the 4th, but there's nobody mining gas in his natural. The main is mined out. So he can literally only just like trickle out Marauders and build just Marines, but he can't build medevacs or Vikings anymore right now without fixing that. He has the workers too, but like, you know, and he doesn't mine as many minerals.
He's gonna quote unquote catch SpeCial here unsieged. Is that enough? No, and SpeCial will actually be the one on the chase and looking to establish a position from which he can finally siege the 4th of Kelazhu and put an end, claim his championship, his title, his kingship.
And the tanks, the mass of them are going to siege in range, and there's the bio going kaboom. A pretty good spread, though, from the Marines and Marauders are going to be able to clean it up. However, can he afford to replace what SpeCial is already producing again en masse. He's going to kill Marauders in a tank with Hellions, cats. He's bringing out the Vikings. He's landing them. The backup tanks are here. Is this going to be it for SpeCial to punch his ticket for another Latin American StarCraft Championship?
¿Acaso lo ha hecho? ¿Por qué?
All I have is the Enfuego line. And his base is Enfuego.
GG!